First of all, Moraga is ranked number 5 at Flyweight. His only losses in UFC so far are to Demetrius Johnson by armbar and John Dodson by TKO. And he's won as many fights by submission as decision. 35% of his wins, 6 out of 17 bouts in each case. So Moraga is pretty good at taking a fight either by going to the distance or by taking a guy down and finding a way to tap him out. Scoggins is unranked at Flyweight, but that's not really such a bad thing because he's 9-1 overall, and his only loss was a split decision against Dustin Ortiz at the Tough 19 finale, and he's won 60% of his fights by either knockout or TKO, 6 out of 10. So that tells you Moraga has a lot of experience and knows how to go the distance, but Scoggins is a finisher and has a very, very good record. So based on that information, you can make a pick with more in your arsenal now.
Still gonna go with Moraga. I think if he loses here, Scoggins goes in the top 15, and you bump Moraga down to maybe 7 or 8.
All right. I tend to favor Moraga on paper just based on his experience, but I've seen Scoggins fight, and he's super tough. So, yeah, he gave Dustin Ortiz a hell of a test at that Tough 19 finale. You know what? If Scoggins won, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'll still say Moraga for the sake of moving on.
Now, we talked about stacked weight classes in the past. You just mentioned Dustin Ortiz. He's only number 12 in the flyweight division.
Right. Yeah, well, it's a loaded division, just like the featherweight division, because we got 2 ranked fighters here. Nik Lentz is number 8, and Charles Oliveira is number 14.
What does the stats say on this one?
Lentz has won 10 fights by submission, that's 29%, 9 by decision, 26%, and 6 by knockout, 18%. It's a pretty decent split between the ways he gets his wins, but it kind of surprised me when I broke it down that he's actually won more fights by submission. It's not really what you think of when you think Nik Lentz. And interesting to note, for those who haven't followed his career, he trained at the same camp as Brock Lesnar, the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy. They've got a lot of champions in that club, so you know what? He's definitely got the skills to pay the bills, but you can't overlook Oliveira because he's on a 2-fight win streak, won 4 of his last 6, and he just got a Performance of the Night bonus for submitting Hatsuhiyoki with a modified anaconda choke back in June.
Well, I mean, I'm going to favor Lentz on this one, but I mean, what was it? A year and a half ago, Stevie, we almost wrote Nik Lentz off as being a future cut, you know what I mean? Like, he was on the verge of losing his job at the UFC, and now he is number 8, and a victory here, you could make the case maybe number 7 or 6.
Yeah, well, same for Oliveira. If he gets a win here, he jumps way up in the rankings, and I'm really curious about seeing this fight go to the ground because with Lentz getting a majority of his wins by submission and Oliveira having almost half of his wins by submission, 11 of 23 wins, I'd say there's no advantage on the ground either way. These guys, if it goes to the ground, it's going to be one of those chess matches that we always talk about when guys are great at grappling and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, those chess matches are usually boring, though.
That depends on if you're looking for the right things or not. If you're skilled in the knowledge and you know what guys are going for when they move up and they're looking for an arm triangle choke or they pass guard and they're looking for an arm bar, some people think that's boring. I think that's a lot of fun. I think it's exciting to watch.
Let's move on to Joe Lauzon against Michael Chiesa from The Ultimate Fighter. Seems like every show is an Ultimate Fighter alum on the show, but you know, I think Chiesa's biting off more than he can chew here.
Chiesa. I'm sorry to keep correcting you on pronunciations, but it's Michael Chiesa.
Okay, Chiesa.
Yes. Do you realize that Joe Lauzon has been in UFC since 2006 consecutively?
Yeah.
He hasn't gone anywhere else. He hasn't been cut. He hasn't fought for a different promotion. From 2006 till now, he's had 16 fights in UFC.
It's it's a testament to his work ethic, and he's a fan favorite. So
Yeah, and he's got some big wins in his career too. He's beaten Mac Danzig, Melvin Gillard, Jamie Varner, the Little Heathen, Jeremy Stevens. And here's a fun fact for you. He's won 56% of his fights that he's won by submission. 18 out of 32.
he also beat Gabe Rudiger.
That's true. He also beat Gabe Rudiger, which is probably everybody's favorite win of his career. But Chiesa, he's pretty damn good. He's only lost to Jorge. Now I'm botching names. He's only lost to Jorge Masvidal, and that was Seattle last year. But he's won every other fight he's had, and he wins 2 out of every 3 fights by submission, and over half of those wins are by rear naked choke. So if Michael Chiesa gets your back, you're in trouble.
Well, Lauzon has that in common. He also got beat by Jorge Masvidal, but that was in the minors back in 05. Another name that Lauzon's got beaten by, Ivan Menjivar with a calf slicer.
Yeah, one of those rarely seen submissions in UFC. So it's another one of these fights where, if it goes to the ground, you may not know who gets the advantage. But if I say this straight up, if Chiesa jumps on his back and gets an arm around his neck, Lauzon's in trouble.
For all the experience Lauzon has, you got to give him the edge in this fight. And the scary thing is, Stevie, Lauzon's only 30.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's an advantage or not. Yeah, he's got the competitive edge because of experience, but he's also not exactly won every single one of those 16 fights he's had. I mean, he's looked great when he's looked great, but he's looked bad when he's been terrible. So Chiesa could come up and make a name for himself by submitting Lauzon. I see it as a strong possibility.
Well, if the fight does get fight of the night, he will break the tie he currently has with Lauzon has with Anderson Silva for most post-fight bonus awards.
That's true. Well, let's move on to the heavyweights. We've got Matt Mitrione and Derrick Lewis, a.k.a. the Black Beast.
Boy, oh boy. I am not a Mitrione fan, so I'm going to pick Lewis here. I'm going to say knockout because I really hope Mitrione gets his head caved in.
Well, let me give you the stats before you conclude that that's what's going to happen. Mitrione is 7-3 overall. He's 2 out of his last 3. He got a Performance of the Night bonus against Sean Jordan at the Macau fights in March, and all but one of his wins are by knockout, 6 out of 7. Now, you may not like Mitrione, but that's pretty impressive. Also impressive is the Black Beast. He's 11-2, he's undefeated in UFC, and he hasn't lost a fight since Bellator 46, all the way back in 2011. And the most impressive stat about Derrick Lewis is he wins 71% of his fights by knockout or TKO. 10 out of 14 fights. So you might want to favor Derrick Lewis, but Mitrione is no scrub.
He's one of those character fighters that either you love or you hate. And, I hate saying rubs me the wrong way, that's not the right term, but it's basically when I see him fight, I'm cheering for his opponent. I don't know why, he irks me the wrong way.
I don't know, I find Mitrione to be charismatic and entertaining. I like his interviews, I like his style. I don't know if he's ever going to be an all-time great heavyweight because he started his career a little too late, but Mitrione is not a guy that I'm upset to watch fight. I enjoy him.
Now, before we move on to the next fight, Stevie, I do want to get your opinion on one fight. I just can't remember who his opponent is, but there's a fighter on this show that just fought, 12 days ago?
Chaz Skelly. He beat Tom Ninamaki in Tulsa, and now he's fighting Sean Soriano on the prelims.
You have to have a comment on that. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Well, since he won the fight with Ninamaki by submission, he didn't take any damage, so in theory, I can understand how he got medically cleared, but at the same time, taking fights 2 weeks apart, it's not generally healthy for you as a professional fighter.
I mean, he's doing them a solid by filling in last minute, but I mean, if he wins, great. It's good for him. It's good. It basically really puts a gold star next to his name for Joe Silva. But if he loses and gets like rocked or something really bad, it's like, well, it might. I don't know. It might have some opponents of MMA bring this up as a point of order. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, again, this goes back to what I said before about why they can't cut anybody, because they have too many people dropping out of cards. They're running too many events, and they need every person they can get. So that's an example of why this is happening. Why Skelly is taking 2 fights in 2 weeks, because they have too many events and not enough fighters.
Let's go on to the co-main event, and this is one of the fights where I wish I could see this fight live on 360, and that is Alistair Overeem against Ben Rothwell.
Got some good stats for you on this one, Peter.
All right, go for it.
Alistair Overeem is currently ranked number 7 at heavyweight in the UFC. He is the former Strikeforce heavyweight champion, but he is only 50-50 in his UFC career. He's got wins over Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir, and he's got losses to Bigfoot Silva and Travis Hoppa Brown. Meanwhile, Ben Rothwell is completely unranked at heavyweight, but he's 33-9 overall. That's pretty damn impressive. He was undefeated in the IFL, 9-0, and 57% of his 33 wins are either KO or TKO. So these are two big boys that are just going to slug it out.
Well, in that case, what do you have on this one?
You know what? With Alistair Overeem, it's always a question of, can he get the stoppage early? If he gets a really good shot in on Big Ben Rothwell early in the fight and puts him on his ass and the referee waves it off, he'll be fine. But if it goes more than 3 minutes, Alistair Overeem gets really tired. We all know he packs a lot of muscle on that frame of his. It sucks up a lot of oxygen, gets a lot of lactic acid built up in his muscles. He slows down really quickly, and then guys just absolutely overwhelm him once he gets tired. So Rothwell's strategy here has to just be survive the first 2 minutes, and if he can do that, he's got a really good chance.
Now, do you think, I hate to make this comparison because it's in some ways just wrong to bring these two fighters and compare them, but is it sort of like Tank Abbott where if you can survive the first couple of minutes, you'll be fine?
I think you can make that comparison. I will not argue with you making it. I wouldn't have chosen it myself, but I can see where you're drawing the analogy.
Now, as far as the odds are concerned, Overeem is a minus 570, Rothwell plus 435, so I put some money on Rothwell.
Yeah, that's a little long on Rothwell. I think some people are seriously underestimating him in this fight.
And those aren't the worst odds. I mean, some of these odds here from our friends at MMA Oddsbreaker, you know, some of them are pretty close, and there's one of the prelims that's minus 600 to plus 450. I mean, other than that, it's you know, there's some fights here or there you might want to put a couple bucks on, but Rothwell being plus 435, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, you know what? I'd actually play Rothwell on a parlay if I was going to make a bet. I'd pick him to win and partner it up with something else and try to make a combo out of it, because with plus 435, like I said before, if he can weather the storm for a few minutes, he'll have easy pickings of Overeem after that.
Absolutely. Now, main event in the middleweight division, Ronaldo Souza against Gegard and Mousasi. Man, this is going to be a great fight. On paper, it's really entertaining. The casual fans should get a kick out of this one as well. It's not just a hardcore fans fight here. But, I mean, you got the stats tonight, so what do the stats say?
Jacare Souza is the number 4 ranked middleweight in UFC. He is a former Strikeforce champion. He is a multiple-time Abu Dhabi and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World Jiu-Jitsu gold medalist. He wins most of his fights by submission, which just goes to show you the depth of that gold medal jiu-jitsu ability. 14 of 20 wins, 70% of his fights end in submission. Meanwhile, Gegard Mousasi is number 7 in the middleweight division and owns a win over Jacare Souza back in 2008 when he captured the Dream middleweight title. He's also the former Strikeforce light heavyweight champion, and 43% of his matches end by knockout, 29% end by submission.